Sorry, to
get mentoring on Agile.
to get mentoring. Okay. So what to look for?
All the way of working principles, what we need to follow in the future.
Okay. Okay.
Structured way of becoming one.
How to get one? How to become one? All right. Any other topics? Okay. So I'm Silvana Wasitova. Is it okay if I introduce myself? Yeah. I have been an Agile coach for the past 8 years and 13 years as Agile practitioner. I started in 2005 when I was with Yahoo, and when Yahoo was just starting the large Agile transformation. Let me see. Before that, I was a classical waterfall type project manager. And not only was I a PMP, I'm still a PMP. I taught PMP courses. So I understand where that comes from. And I'm still a PMP because many of my clients really appreciate that somebody knows where they're coming from. And all my PDUs are through Agile activities, such as this one. Okay, and I was a Scrum Master at Yahoo for 5 years, and then branched off on my own, was the first Agile coach at Nestle, was coaching them, starting with one team for 3 months. And, oh, that was good. It produces good results. So the next team, oh, that's good. That produces good results. And you know what they say? If you succeed once, that was an accident. Try again. If you succeed twice, you were lucky. If you succeed 3 times, then they say, well, maybe you know what you're doing and there's something to this. So I ended up coaching there for 2 years. And then I coached at Skype and then Swiss banks and so on and so on. So today we'll talk about Agile coaching. And the agility part, there's many other sessions about the Agile part, okay? So I'm not going to talk about the agility part here. Suffice it to say that Agile coaching needs Agile. Yeah. Now, there's quite a bit of coaching that comes from the professional coaching world. And that is something that we're bringing into agility and Agile world. And what I am about to show you today is something that's being proposed to Scrum Alliance to adopt as the code of conduct for coaches, and also an explanation. What are Agile coaches? What should we be looking for? Right? So that's what we will see. And this part here comes from the coaching profession. Professional coaches, they avoid getting involved in the client's problem. How can you coach without getting involved in the client's problem? What do you do? How do you do it? How do you do it? How can you coach without getting involved in the client's problem? Yeah, you do it. That's what I do. I mean, yeah, we will get somewhat involved, but it's the client's problem. It's not our personal problem. And there is a distinction. And that's something that professional coaches keep that line very clear. Now, Agile coaches, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But this is the idea, okay? And so avoid getting involved in the client's problems, avoid proposing answers. You can help the client find answers, and avoid offering options and solutions. What coaches do, professional coaches, is they help the client and they accompany the client to find their own solutions. And they do this by asking questions, clarifying questions, powerful questions. How many of you have heard of powerful questions? Okay, not that many. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. So this particular initiative, this started at the Coaches Retreat, Agile Coaches Retreat in Copenhagen last October. And these 9 people here, we chose to work on this topic to define what is Agile Coaching and what does it mean. And this is the statement that for us summarizes what Agile Coaching is. It's a collaboration with people, with clients or with our peers in thought-provoking and creative journey. We heard this morning that Taga talked about breaking rules, so there's creativity in it. Creative journey using coaching approaches. This is the professional coaching from previous slide. Coaching approach with agile mindset and principles to help individuals, teams, and organizations be the best they can be. So if you just want what is Agile Coaching, that's the answer. If you want to find out more, you'll go to that website. What is Agile Coaching? So what does this actually mean? Well, what are we looking for in Agile coaches? What are their traits? And not just Agile in body. What are some things you would look for in Agile coaches? What are some traits you would want to see? This is the audience participation part. What would you like to see? Can be trusted, absolutely. Need to build trust is something that is crucial and foundational to everything else. So trustworthy and building trust. What else?
Proven experience.
Has experience, yeah. And they better have Agile experience. If they're calling themselves Agile Coach, they should have done Agile in a significant way. Not just 1-2 projects and now suddenly they're Agile Coach. That's not much depth of experience. And I personally would not be hiring a person, an Agile Coach with little experience. I can hire a Scrum Master even with no experience or with little experience. But for an Agile Coach, I want somebody who's seen many more, who's had many more experiences. So they don't just say, what worked over there is going to be applied here and it's going to work the same way, because usually it doesn't. Okay, so experience.
Good listening.
Listening, absolutely. We'll talk in some more depth about listening. What else?
Problem solving.
Problem solving. Problem solving, but helping the client solve the problem. It's not necessarily that I come with solutions. Okay? But yes, look for what is the ideal situation and help the client or us or the team or the management team to get there. Okay? What else?
The one who asks powerful questions.
Ask powerful questions. Now, powerful questions are a means to get there. Yeah. So that's part of the toolbox. That's something that we do as coaches. What else?
Clear vision and thoughts.
A what?
Clear vision.
Clear vision. Now, is it the coach's vision?
No, others.
The client's vision.
Yeah.
The coach is always at the service of the client. And this is why most coaching conversations, including Agile coaching conversations, should start with, what would you like to achieve? And coaches also walk the talk and model the behavior. I started this session with asking you, what would you like to get? And it's as simple as that, because it establishes a rapport, and also it helps me understand what you're looking for and help get in that direction. As opposed to, I prepared my presentation, that's what I'll give, who cares what you want? Okay? So always start with, what would you like? Yeah?
Empathy.
Empathy, absolutely, yes. Okay? So this is what we enumerated. And yes, it's a long list, and there's probably more. And this is what we listed as the traits that we would be looking for, we encourage. Now, not everybody has everything all the time, but this is the ideal that we're looking for in coaches and in Agile coaches. No judgment. If a client is doing it wrong, the coach doesn't come there and says, you're doing it wrong. The coach comes in and says, what's the benefit of doing it that way? What are you trying to achieve? Is there a better way? Now, then you can go into, have you read? Have you talked to somebody else? Have you explored other materials, articles, books, resources? This is where the experience comes in, where you say, well, there's all these other things, but you're not saying this is your solution. So no judgment. Creating a safe environment, an environment of trust, empathy, understanding from the other person's perspective, compassion. Compassion. You may disagree with what they're doing, but as long as you're their coach, you help them move forward towards their goal, the goal that they set out. Not the goal, excuse me, I'm hot and cold while traveling here. Not the goal that I want. Not even the ideal that wouldn't it be so great if they do this and this and this. Until we have that conversation and the client chooses that that's their goal, it's not my business to impose that. Compassion, positive regard, that everybody is trying their best, that they have their good intention, and believe in people. Encourage them. Encourage people in their potential and abilities. Most of my coaching clients, individuals, end up being someplace where a year prior they did not imagine they would be there. They would just look back and say, why did I do things that way? But it's a journey. And it's, I help and I accompany. I don't tell them, you have to do this. So their potential is achieved when the coach says, what else can you do? How can that be even better? How can we go for something even better, even faster, even whatever? Radiate confidence, even in an uncertain environment, even when things are breaking. I was once in a situation where we were in a room about this size. This side was my team. That side was the client's team. So we're working side by side. And our portal was under DDoS attack. Nobody could log in. And we're furiously working away, looking at what else can we try. This is my team. What else can we try? And I'm calling team in California, team in India. What else do you see? What else are we trying over there? And we're furiously being like, ducks that are calm on the surface, paddling really hard underneath. Well, that's what we were up to. And about 2 hours into this, one of our client contacts comes over and says, I demand an explanation in writing. And I was the chief program manager of this thing on our side. I had to respond. calm, cool, collected, with advice of my attorney, our attorney. But that's what you have to do as a coach. Oops, I moved forward. Radiate confidence, build relationships, and build relationships actively. When you're the coach, you don't wait for somebody to come to you. You come to them and say, "Hi, I'm Silvana. Amit, what do you do, Amit?"
I'm also a race coach. I'm struggling.
You're struggling. Okay, let's talk after, okay? And you initiate this conversation. And you initiate that conversation everywhere you go as a coach. Now, you don't do it on the street and walk up to strangers. But if you're in a company, in an environment, internal or external, and your role is an Agile coach, and you have a mandate, and it's been defined what the perimeters of your mandate are, you go talk to the people, even just introduce yourself. We may not talk agility for several months, but we know who we are. Unlocking potential of others. This is one of the hardest things about coaching is it's not about the coach. It's not for self-glorification. It is to help the client to succeed. Yes, I get satisfaction when my client and the teams do something they've never done before. It's their success, and it's my success through them. And we did it together. You need to be authentic, true to yourself, transparent, open, honest, the Agile values. When you don't know, you say you don't know. You can say, have you considered, have you tried, have you looked? But if I haven't done it, I haven't seen it, maybe I don't know. I can say, oh, so-and-so wrote about this, let's check together. Or let's consult somebody else, but I don't pretend to know. And not letting my knowledge and my experience get in the way to dictate what to do. Stay curious, stay vulnerable, if you make mistakes, learn from them, and nurture growth in others and ourselves. Is that a good list? Yeah, it's extensive, yeah. How many of you feel like you're fulfilling that list today?
I feel sometimes it looks contradictory also.
Sometimes it?
Seems contradictory also. You see, the agile coach, one of the traits is like he should be well enough to guide or to provide advice whenever needed.
Yeah.
But again, it's no judgment or...
Yeah.
So again, like one of the trait is like no judgment.
No judgment.
So like does not allow their knowledge to get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So these two things, I feel like these are contradictory to each other.
So you dance in the moment. Yeah, it's not always one way. There's definitely this aspect of having experience. This is actually why many companies hire us, is we have experience, right? So we can say, we've tried it, or my team has tried a particular way, but that may or may not work for you. Let's explore what's best for you. So it's complementary. It's not contradictory, but both of those can be true.
Yeah, true, that's correct. Like, but sometimes like if you know how to do the things correctly, then you need to provide your suggestion also, right?
Sure. That assumes there's one correct way. And often, that is not the case. Sometimes it's very, very clear, right? Sometimes it's very clear that you have to do it one particular way, it's industry standard, or any other way will break, sure. But for example, mock programming. How many of you would tell somebody you have to do it that way?
Yeah.
We know it works for some people. We know it works for some teams, some companies, some organizations. But it's not something I can say, hey, you have to do it this way. I can say, have you considered? And depending on their reaction, they may not be ready today. They may not be ready until 6 months from now. They may not be ready until 3 years from now. They may not be ready ever.
Yeah, that is fine. Like, I mean to say, like, suppose someone is doing something and you are coaching.
Can you hold it closer? So, yeah.
I mean to say, if someone is doing in their project, like if they are following some way and you know, like that way is not the correct way.
So give me an example.
Suppose your application is connecting to some ENT system, and as a coach, like personally, you know that ENT system is going to be retired after some time, after 1 year or 2 years, and the person who is developing or connecting, they don't know, they don't have information.
So
on that.
the coach asked the question,
So
do you
you
know,
really-
how long is the system supposed to be running? What's the expected lifetime? Because I may know that information as accurate from somewhere else, or I may have heard a rumor. I don't know that.
Yeah.
But it's a possibility. It certainly is a question that could be asked. And it could be asked to that individual, to the team around that individual, to the organization, to their management. The question can be asked in multiple places. Because if I am in that organization, I know this as a fact, I can share information. And then take off my coaching hat and just say, this has been decided on such and such day, and it's going to retire in 6 months or in 2 years. Therefore, it's minimal effort. It's information. It's not coaching.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the skill list is long. It is aspirational. It's something we would like coaches to be. And in terms of, these are the traits. In terms of skills, there's the observing, the listening at 3 levels. I'll get into that later. Mirroring, what's mirroring? What is mirroring aside from what's written there? What does that mean?
Yeah, behaviors and reactions.
Mirror the behavior or even mirror the statement. You said that's really important. Is it really?
To get into the same wavelength, maybe? Or
Sorry?
To get to the wavelength of the person you're
Yes.
coaching, so
Yeah.
it could be important.
It could be. So this is an example of mirroring. Maybe, as you said, it's to get on the same baseline, on the same page. This is mirroring. It's reflecting back to the system, reflecting back the statement, reflecting back to the team. For example, I noticed that you guys said that your daily stand-up is at 9:30. It's now 9:45. What's going on? It's not a value judgment, but it is reflecting what you agreed and today's reality. So that's mirroring. It's reflecting back. Now, it would be for the team to decide what to do next. Right? So that's an example of mirroring. Giving and receiving feedback. Clarifying. Actually, it's surprising how much coaching you can do by just asking questions to clarify. So that example there, do you know what the expected lifetime of the system is? Has there been any conversation about sunset period? That's all clarification. Enabling safety through the structure, building relationships, empirical approach that means using data, keeping confidentiality, building trust, and promoting a safe-to-fail environment where people don't feel that they're being judged for experimenting. Because one of the tenets of agility is experimentation. Do things you haven't done before, or do things a new way. Because that is how innovation happens, is doing something new, something different. It also means that some of it is going to fail, and making that safe. Navigating conflicts, Ooh la la. How often we have to navigate conflicts. Agile coach or not, it's part of life, part of working in large enterprises, even small ones, and coaches need to be a bit better about that. And having the distance from the problem, and focusing on desired solution, those help navigating conflict. And asking powerful questions. There's one more important thing to differentiate. So sometimes we're just hired as Agile coaches, but there's actually many different stances that we take. And we ourselves, we coaches, need to be clear about this. When I'm acting as a coach, I'm helping the client explore the problem space and identify their solution. Now, I can also act as a teacher. Sometimes I do trainings, Scrum trainings. That's just imparting knowledge. This is what the Scrum Guide says, this is what we do, this is why we do it. That's not coaching, it's teaching. Sometimes it's facilitation. And in that role, I make things easier to achieve the goal. And as a coach, that includes saying, oh, have you talked to that team over there? Come, let me introduce you. This is an example of facilitating. And as a coach, you can be doing that. Or even, have you talked to such and such expert? Or have you looked? Have you seen? Have you read? Those are examples of facilitating. Moderating. You have your own process, or there has been a process defined. We will follow it, and as a moderator, I will ensure that everybody is playing by the rules. That's not coaching, that's moderating. There's a time box. Let's keep to the time box. Are we choosing to extend the time box? Let's make a communal decision. As an advisor, I give advice. Now that is contradictory to coaching, and sometimes I clarify this. Sometimes with one specific client, one specific incident, he came to me, he specifically wanted advice. And I started with, let's explore what you have considered. What options have you looked at? And he had 3 options. Not this in the way that Tatagat was suggesting, where he was trying to propose one. He genuinely didn't know. And then, together, we explored the pros and cons of each one of them. And through that conversation, it became clear to him which one was a better long-term solution, as opposed to, let's just do this and it's going to be good for the next 2-3 months. The long-term solution involved getting organizational alignment, getting agreement with others, but it was the right thing for them. And that's what he ended up pursuing. But when the conversation started, he just wanted advice. And sometimes it's my expertise. And then I show people how to do it, or I advise them how to do it, or I tell them how to do it. Or as a mentor, this is something I've gone through, or this is something that we have experienced, or my team has experienced. This may or may not be useful to you. And as a mentor, we also, what often happens, people open doors for others as mentors. As a coach, you're not expected to do that. But when you're in an organization, you could be wearing any of these hats. So be clear which one. And this is the mentoring side. Consultant, often consultant and advisor. Consultant is used as a catch-all phrase that applies to many of these stances. Coaching sometimes is just observing, noticing how things are working or not working, and mirroring it back to the system or to the persons involved. And being a servant leader, being in service to others, and setting example. So all of those are things that you could be doing as an Agile coach, and sometimes multiple of those roles per day. There are times I would explicitly say, as a coach, I would explore you to look this way, but something that I have seen, so from my experience, this thing worked and this thing did not. So yes, then it becomes something influencing. But then I'm clarifying that this is not a coaching conversation, this one. And when you're hired into a company or when you're internal coach, sometimes you need to clarify which of these stances is expected of me. Because oftentimes, coaches are hired just for their expertise or experience, and not necessarily for the coaching. And we know there are Agile coaches who, yes, they say they're Agile coaches, but they're really technical architects. They have the development depth of experience, but not the coaching conversation, and then they guide all the solutions. And from coaching perspective, we want to say that that is really more expertise and giving advice. So this is the part where we're having this conversation with Scrum Alliance to make that clarification. Okay, comments, reactions? When we worked through these concepts, that's when many things became clear, even for me. This was something that I worked with a team on this 3 or 4 years ago. And all of us who were involved in this conversation were like, aha, yes, okay, now I get it. Oh, now I see that difference. So this is something that I encourage you to, if you're coaching, to have this handy so you can just check yourself. Which role, which stance am I taking at this moment in this conversation? So right now, I'm both teaching and sharing experiences and giving advice right now. Comments? Sorry?
Quite an exhaustive list.
It's an exhaustive list, but it clarifies the differences of the roles, of the stances. It could be the same person, and yet they're in one conversation in one particular stance and then entering another one. So for example, if I'm entering a retrospective, usually I'm facilitating. Unless there is a Scrum Master who may be new, who may be experienced, and it's his role to be facilitating, then I'm observing. I may give feedback at the end of the session. I may give feedback in private to the Scrum Master, not in front of the team. All of those are possible. But it's so important to know, or to be self-aware, which of these I'm playing at the moment. Other comments?
Why do you say this is particular of an Agile coach? Because these attributes could be applied to any field.
Yes, they could be to any field. It could be to any consulting,
Any sports, maybe even sport fields, like in other areas, they also follow this kind of thing.
Yes, it's applicable elsewhere. Now in sports, interestingly, the sport coach, because this is something that's often brought up in context of Agile coaching conversation. Well, you know, the football team has a coach, the cricket team has a coach. Why shouldn't an Agile team have a coach? And a sport coach is often focusing on advising or telling people, do this, do more repetitions, do more of this type of exercise, or don't do an exercise just before the big match, and go get your sleep. And so the coach is much more directive in sport world than it is in professional coaching. Okay? In professional coaching, the conversation would be, would you like to win tomorrow's game? What would help you win tomorrow's game? What do you need to do to mentally be prepared, be ready to win tomorrow's game. And the person, the athlete may say, a good night's sleep would be good, as opposed to the sporting coach saying, 10 o'clock, bedtime, lights out. Okay, so it's a difference in how the profession is practiced within those contexts. The professional coaching as defined by International Coaching Federation and federations about professional coaching are focused on the coach as an accompaniment to the client in finding their solution, and not as somebody who dictates or tells them what to do. That's a big difference from the coaching, from the sporting world. But it is true that, I mean, there's teaching all over. And many teachers in schools are also acting as counselors and advisors and mentors. This is true too. Now, there was a comment here and I'll come back to you. Yes, somebody here.
It was me.
Yes.
So my question is, it seems that to become a coach, it has to be within ourselves, right? It has to be a passion to become a coach, because many of the items might not reflect my personality
Yes.
or my nature of working with things.
Yeah.
Right? So I might be introvert and may not be able to greet all the people within my surroundings. So sure. Right? So it has to be within ourselves, right? Rather than.
But that's true of any profession, right? It's not just coaching. You should take on a profession where you would blossom, that suits you. And for some people it's coaching, for some people it's being a singer or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is true, there's quite a bit of personality trait, but there's also what kind of personal growth do I want to undertake? What kind of evolving journey do I want to take? The best coaches that I know, Agile coaches, are continuously learning all the time. And I mean, you look at Tobias Meyer, where he is today is different from where he was 10 years ago or 13 years ago when I met him, right? So there is that evolving aspect. That's true of anybody, any human being, first of all. It's certainly true of Agile teams, and we expect that of Agile teams, which is why when a new team does something wrong, I'll just say, well, it's a beginner's team.
Yeah.
What can you do better next time? So this is true of us. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is being an introvert. There are many coaches who are introvert.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean, hi. It doesn't mean that. It does mean that, oh, there's this problem having, okay, I'll give somebody a call. That's the initiating part. But it's within the person's limits and abilities and comfort zone and personality, right? So not everybody is going to be talking up half of the people in the foyer. But there are coaches who would sit and say, okay, what's happening? What's going on in your organization? So the quiet coaches exist and are very, very effective. In fact, most coaches are not the flamboyant types because this is not their thing. And you'll see why a couple slides later. Yeah. And this lady and then come to you. Yeah. Okay. So immaturity members, yeah.
So, I mean, kind of questions you want to get in right answers from there. Then you don't get to be there because they might not be able to understand the questions correctly, maybe.
Sure.
So, in that case, what kind of role are you going to play?
If it's an immature team, if it is a new team, if it is a team that's starting out, oftentimes I'm either teaching or they or sharing expertise or being a mentor. Oftentimes it's that, because they're just getting started. They need to know the basics, they need to know the mechanics, the stand-ups, those things. And so those are just teaching the basics. And I would clarify, and I clarify that to my clients and to the managers who hire me. I would say, I will take the teaching role, I will train them, teach them and train them in those basics, and then I would encourage them to reach higher level from there. Right? So they'll get the basics, that's guaranteed, and I'll provide training for that. But beyond that, then it depends how willing are they to experiment, how much they want to learn, how much they're open to doing things differently, and that varies. Not all teams become superstars in 3 months. Some of my teams in 3 months see a huge difference. And some teams, it's 9 months later and they're still struggling, right?
I think it's about even the balance in the team. People are different and they might be complementing each other as well.
Yes, the balance in the team definitely makes a difference because team members within the team can encourage other team members and move them along quicker, and even more quickly than if I do it as the external, because then it's their peer. It's somebody they trust, they have trusted for years or they have worked with, and if this person says so, now they will be a bit more willing to give it a try. Yes. So sometimes my coaching is by influencing, by noticing who in that team influences the others, and then have that conversation with that team member. And that's part of coaching. That's part of reading the environment. Yeah. Somebody? Yeah? Yes? No?
You can ask, then I will.
It will get to you.
Yeah.
We'll make sure it gets to you. Yeah.
Hi, what are some of the scenarios where you feel that coaching is a failure or is not really coaching?
Coaching is
Could you
not,
give us some examples?
Coaching is not really coaching. Look, for example, this, when doing trainings or when giving specific advice, then it's not really coaching.
So could you describe a couple, like your past experience that you felt that this is leading to a disaster? This is not really what coaching is about.
I'm failing to understand the question, so I'm going to sit down and you can explain what you mean.
So I'm sure you've coached a number of teams in the past.
I have coached for 8 years.
So, and you would have come across scenarios where it didn't go as planned. Not really, where you felt you could have done something better. So could you describe some of those scenarios?
So the scenario that comes to mind, it's not so much, I'm not sure if I would describe it as coaching, but here's the circumstances of that particular situation. I was coaching at an organization and have helped multiple teams get started with Agile, and they're moving along. And at this point, the mid-level managers want more of this. And there's this one voice that suggests that he doesn't really want to move forward. And what actually happened in that particular case is this individual introduced the stage gate system into that organization 10 years before. And he basically saw that this was undoing his work. So, I mean, you know, I made efforts to get aligned. What would you like to see happen? This has been proven to work elsewhere. You see there's good results in this team, that team, the other team. He wasn't happy with changing, moving forward.
Seeing the inability of few key people to change.
That's always the case, right? And in organizations, and there is no one formula which person is going to do that for you. So, hold on a second. Okay.
The question is about the observer and moderator. about, helping you follow the process and watching and observing, right? So I feel like there's a very thin line between micromanagement and this part.
Usually moderators are for specific events. It's not all the time. Because otherwise, yeah, it would be, oh, we have rules here. No, it would be all the time, yeah. So usually it would be, for example, let's do World Cafe. Well, World Cafe has these following rules, or let's do open space. Then, this is what we are following, okay? I promise that we'll get to you, so.
Thank you so much.
There it is.
So, part of my question got answered
Before, okay, that's good.
Right. My question actually was, there are so many possible stances, and say for example, I'm working with a new team, it's been only 2 weeks that I've known them. How do we actually decide on which stance to move on to? Maybe one stance is not working, and then we may want to move to a different stance. So is there a threshold, or like, how can we keep a tab that we should now, try something else because it's not working with the team?
Sure. When you're starting out, oftentimes the expectation is that you will do training. Oftentimes, I mean that's my 8 years. However, even with that expectation sort of being in the air and sometimes even explicitly spoken, I first do the observe and ask the clarifying questions. What is it that they really want? Why do they want Agile? What are their expectations? And something that I shared with the conversation team earlier, oftentimes the expectation is, we want the organization to be agile, we bring a coach, she'll sprinkle the magic dust, the team will become agile, and everything will be the same, and management does not have to change.
That's what happens.
Yeah. So I actually have this conversation with management and asking the question of, why do you want Agile? What do you expect to get? And what are you willing to change for the organization to be Agile? And that's the toughest question. And oftentimes the consultant does not get to ask that question. But that's actually what you really want. So when you are starting out, yeah, there will be the training, the teaching mode, the facilitating, the advising, the sharing expertise. Then later on will come the mentoring. Typically it comes later on. But the first thing is, as a coach, in coaching stance, I want to know what their goals are. And even, am I the right person to help them get the flavor of agility they want? Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Was there something else? Yeah.
My question is related to servant leader. Servant leader is, if you ask me, and correct me if I'm wrong, this more of the leadership style. Is there any other leadership style which you might have followed or which is suggested in terms of being a coach? Or is just always the servant leadership?
When it comes to specifically being a coach, it's about accompanying the other. So as a coach, it's not my goal, it's not my objectives that I'm serving, it's the other person. So when I'm being a coach, that's what it is. Now, it could be, I mean, there are organizational CTOs who coach either their employees or people within the organization. And when they're being a CTO, they have objectives, they want to achieve certain things, but when they're coaching an employee, it could be career coaching, it could be how to approach so-and-so, then it becomes, what's their objective? Does that help?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay. All right, yes. Thank you. I'm being directive, take the mic.
That's okay. Yeah, so I feel that these are all different skills, right? And it's very hard for me to imagine that everyone would be good at everything here.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
So How many of, what are the top of this list would be really required for?
It depends on the person, and you actually choose. So for example, if somebody wants to hire me and they expect TDD coaching or expertise, I would tell them, you know, my coding days are long, long gone. I'm not the best person. I can help find somebody to do that, and we can collaborate, and we can come in as a team, but I'm not the best person. So this is a personal decision, and you choose what's right for you, and then you choose which one you're more aligned with in the sense of which one gives you the most personal satisfaction. Which one should be your career choice? The conversation earlier about Ikigai, that's about identifying what you're good at, what the company needs, what the environment needs, and hopefully the Venn diagram of intersections, that's yours. So that's up to you to decide.
There must be some key things that are required. Like I could see like observation and moderation and maybe mentoring and coaching. Maybe these are the things maybe in the core of it.
I certainly do quite a bit of mentoring, and I do differentiate between now I'm coaching and now I'm mentoring, and I do some trainings too. But yeah, those are separate. But that's my particular path, and you know that may or may not be. For example, you take Henry Knieber. He does more trainings and more of the. I mean, he also poses these tickling questions of why would you want to do it that way, or what's the benefit of doing it that way? And he does that. I mean, this is his personality. This is how he. But if you view his videos, he's acting as an expert, and he's explaining, and he's teaching. Okay.
So for being an agile coach, or like you don't have all of these qualities by yourself, would that mean that you would need a team, or it depends also again the organization that what
depends
is
on the organization. Okay. Very much depends, and there are external coaches who collaborate with other people. There are external coaches who work alone. Internally, usually there's people with multiple skill sets, and hopefully they support each other. Then that becomes like a coaching team. Whether it's officially called a coaching team or not, it's a separate conversation. But there are people who can help others. Okay? Shall we move on? Yeah? Oh. Why it's not moving? Okay. It's not moving here either. Page down. Okay. What can we do? Okay. How to get started? Get experience. Get agile experience and get coaching experience. And with coaching, get coaching training. Highly recommend it. When I first started as Agile coach, I was starting and banking on experience only. And then I discovered what coaching means. And it was sessions like this that got me thinking, oh, there's all these multiple stances, and what's the difference, and when do I do one or the other? So that's the getting coaching training. Learn what that means. Learn there are so many things, and then you have to practice it. And then you inspect and adapt. I mean, that's just like anything else. Now, luckily, there's a lot about agility, and hopefully by the time you come to Agile coaching, you already know the Agile part. And then it's a matter of deepening the coaching knowledge and skills. That's how to get started. How to continue? It's about more experience, continuous learning, and modeling the behavior and walking the talk. That is absolutely crucial. It's one of the most telling things that I notice in fellow coaches is whether or not they're listening, they're asking clarifying questions, they're empathetic, all those things that you mentioned before. It's one of the things that now it becomes second nature. It was not my second nature when I started. Yeah. I started with, I've been a Scrum Master for 5 years, I can do this, I can help other teams. That's fine. We all have to start someplace. Nothing wrong with that. But then do we continuously learn, inspect and adapt, and add to our works? And that's, for me, if I'm telling teams to continuously inspect and adapt and become better, I should do that too. That's my expectation from coaches. So let's do an exercise. We have about an hour. We'll do this coaching dojo exercise and we'll practice a few things. I'll explain a few, there's a few more slides. I'll explain what we will do. But let's practice a coaching situation. It's going to be a small mini coaching. And what you'll do is you'll get into groups of 3. And there will be 3 roles within the groups of 3. So don't go into groups of 4, don't go into groups of 2. It's 3, exactly 3, I'm being directed. And you will have, one person is a client, and the client would present a situation that they could use some coaching on. And the situation could be, I have this and this happening with my team, or in my organization, or with my management, or I'm trying to change my career, or whatever, right? But pick something that's not so huge that we can't get into a meaningful place within 10 minutes. The coach will guide the client in exploring the solutions, asking clarification, powerful open-ended questions. We'll see some examples later. Next. And then there will be an observer, and the observer will take notes. Just notice, what did the client say? What did the coach say? How did the client react? Take notes, because this is the observing part. The client and coaching conversation will be 10 minutes, and then there will be 3 minutes for feedback from the observer. And this is what you'll actually do. You know, each person will have their own thing. But this is what you'll do.
Excuse me?
Yeah?
We'll come back. What is 3 levels of listening?
Well, we'll get to that in the next slide. So first of all, powerful questions, examples of powerful questions. And if you go to this website, there's 5 pages worth of examples. Okay? So this is just giving you a sense. It's a way to clarify the situation. So what are the possibilities? If you had a choice, what would you do? What are possible solutions? It's exploration of the space, of the problem space, and also asking for clarifications. What do you mean? What does it look like, sound like, feel like? What would you like it to look like, feel like? What is confusing about it? What about this? What have you tried? This is the background. What do you make of it? What do you think? What do you think is best? How does it look to you? It's questions that help the person evaluate the situation. And here's a secret. This is a coaching secret. When you ask these questions, you look at the client and you really observe what is valuable to this client. Because that's where the answer is hiding. So if the client reacts to specific questions in a dismissive way, okay, that's probably not important. But if the client goes, let me think about it. Now we're getting someplace. As a coach, you want to go deeper into what is going on. Why is this something that we need to stop and think? Because that means we haven't thought about it, and that means we have not, or the client has not, clarified this for themselves. This, what I'm telling you right now, this is the key to coaching. Is helping uncover those things. So how do we do that? Yes, the pre-listening. Now, you know who this is? Ernest Hemingway. And Ernest Hemingway said something about listening. How many of you feel like you're good listeners? Nobody is a good listener here? Okay, at least you're honest. Because this is what Hemingway said. Most people don't listen. How often have you been in a conversation where you're talking, and you get a sense that the person is not really with you? Or, I just started my story. Okay, let's do the reverse. He just started the story and I go in with, oh yeah, it happened to me and I did this and I did the other. Now it's about me. But he was telling his story. Right? And that's not really listening. That's sort of like saying, your story is not important, mine is more important. Okay, so that's not listening. So what are we looking for? Or how do we differentiate the listening? And this is what the observer will be looking for. The 3 levels of listening. The 3 levels are internal, focus, and global, or whole body. Internal is the person is talking, and I'm actually more aware of my own reaction to what he's saying, which means I'm not paying attention to him, right? So we could be talking about his trip to whatever, and like, oh, I was there too, and I went there, and it was like this, and it was raining, and I'm not paying attention to his story. Or my reactions to, oh, he did that. Ooh. Again, I'm not focused on him. So that's level 1. Most coaches do not operate at level 1 listening. Now, focused listening is really focusing on the client, paying attention to the words and the intonation, and actually trying to understand. So this why is it important to you? It's actually an effort to understand, right? Then comes the 3rd level. And here, you're listening for what's not said, what's not uttered, what the client did not say. You see the body reaction. You see that you asked the question and he smiled or rolled his eyes. And that is a signal. What does that mean? What does that smile mean? And I can guess, this is internal, level 1. She might be nodding in understanding. She might be getting the comment. Or maybe she's been in that situation. Now I'm in level 2. Or maybe she's ready to try this, explore this, because this is important to her too. Now some of these are conjectures, some of these I'm guessing. But I'm guessing in an effort to support the client. Oh. Let me just check, do a time check. Okay, I misunderstood the time, so we won't practice. We won't practice. Well, we can do a short practice because I thought we had more time, but I read this wrong. So my apologies and my failure bow. So yeah.
Isn't these all 3 contradicting it in itself? Like there's a difference between listening and recording. So if you're only listening without able to comprehend and understand, then you are only recording. Then a tape recorder would have helped.
Then
And
you
as-
come coaching.
Yeah, and as soon as you start comprehending, then your inner voices would start growing, because then you will have some judgment about what's gonna happen or what is to happen, and which is where you will switch back from focused listening to internal listening, and then the conflicts would start appearing.
Okay. So, as a coach, where do you want to be?
As a coach, I want to delay the judgment as much as possible, but I need to also build some sort of a analysis tool on which a judgment can be created later.
Okay. As a consultant, yes. As an expert, yes. As a coach, you don't need an analysis tool. You may need tools to help explore the situation, but you're not expected to provide a solution. Not as a coach. Now, you, the person, could be inside a company and you're expected to do that. Then you're doing it as the expert, as somebody with the experience, but not in the coaching stance. Not in the coaching stance as defined by ICF and professional coaching. Okay? So when it comes to, and all of that is valid. If you're expected to provide solutions, then yeah, that's part of your contract, that's part of the expectations, that's part of what you're there to deliver. You will do that, but that's not the coaching part of what you do. You will do it. You're professional. I do it. I do trainings. But when, after the training, that same team, that same Scrum Master, that same manager, then ask questions about, well, how about, or what to do in such and such case, or how can we better engage our business partners, or questions of that nature that are beyond basic training, then we go into, what would you like to get?
What do you think?
What is a good approach? What would you see as a good approach? I can then talk about stories and become a mentor of my best dealings with the business were at this company and this is what we did. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what we will do here. So I start with these clarification questions, which is a coaching question.
Okay.
How do you think that would work? What have you tried? What would you like to try? What's standing in the way? What would help remove that blockage so they would participate more often? Have you tried inviting them on a different day? Have you tried inviting a different person? Right? So all of that is now a coaching conversation, because it's not basic standard, this is how you do Scrum, this is how you do Kanban, right? Or this is the solution, you need this many servers based on your projected traffic, and that's a different conversation. That's an expertise conversation.
Most people at some part of coaching want to understand what good looks like in your eyes as a part of coaching conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it becomes very difficult to disappoint them and say that let's talk only what you can do.
So I don't end there, right? So for example, this is a real scenario that I'll describe right now. This was a real client at a bank who wanted to establish, what to do next. And I actually said, let's explore this first, and then I'll tell you what I think. But I want to hear what you think first. And then there was a whole 40 minutes of what he thinks and what he has considered and the alternatives and so on and so on. At the end, I came with, well, this experience over here was like that. This experience at another company was like this. That part is relevant here, that part is not relevant. That part may be applicable, but it may have a different result. Then I'm mentoring. But that came 40 minutes later. Yeah? So I still need to provide to my client what services they expect. And they hired me for my expertise and experience. So I still have that, and I still provide that, but it's not the first thing that I provide. And this is another secret of coaching. If you ask these exploratory questions, and the client actually does the work of looking at options and what is the ideal outcome and what defines the ideal outcome, they do the heavy lifting. They do the work.
They are doing self-commitment to themselves.
Yeah. And what happens when it's self-commitment?
You put in more energy rather than, and you don't want to fail rather than putting it on a coach.
And that's one part of it. And the other part is, it was their idea. They are going to be married to that idea, and they will be so committed to actually implement that idea. Whereas if I give them my idea, how committed are they going to be? But if that was their idea, and I say, oh, that's a great thing. Do you want to try it? Try it for a month, try it for a period, see how it works. He's going to go running.
Yep.
And all I did as a coach was help identify, help tease out the solution, and give him encouragement to go do it. And then 6 months later, he's going to say, oh, that worked. I can say, it was your idea. I know I helped. Because prior to this conversation, that idea was not in his head, and his commitment was not there. But at the end of this conversation, he's ready to run and do something that he has not considered before. That is the power of coaching.
Yep.
So encouraging him to explore is not just, I'm a coach and I'm hiding behind questions. A client has actually said this, all you do is ask questions. And I went back to him. I replied, is it helping you get a better result? And then he said, okay, yeah, yes. So that's what you're looking for. And it's hard to describe what that is without actually doing it. But those of you who have seen your words impacting behaviors of other people, that's what you're doing. And as a teacher, I can tell them, this is Scrum, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. But when they actually go into saying, hey, we need the product owner at the retrospective because he is part of the ownership of the solution, and they arrive at that themselves, that's good. That is achievement as a coach, as a trainer too, but as a coach, that they arrive at that and they are more likely to do what they just described. There was a comment brewing somewhere. No? Okay?
But can they come up with not fantastic idea? Which
They may.
Yeah.
They may.
So as a coach, what's your take on that?
I could be doing the whole spectrum from being open to being directive, right? But it could be this. What do you think you will get with that idea, right? So, for example, one person asked me just a month ago, why do we stand during the daily Scrum? And I could have just said, because it says so in the Scrum. And I said, what do you think would happen if we said that? And she goes, yeah, it will be longer. Okay. She found the answer, and she has internalized that answer, more so than if I told her. Yeah? So there's a whole spectrum, and it could also be, if it's going to be dangerous, you could say, don't do it. Because part of the experimentation is also to say, I think it's a bad idea, but I could be wrong. Yeah? If there's safety issue or whatever, I should say, don't do it. No, people will get hurt or whatever. Then it's part of my responsibility as a human being. But if it is, I haven't thought of it that way. Is it really good? Or I can even say, I don't have good feeling about that particular solution. Would you validate it with somebody else? Or I can say, I have seen that solution and it was bad. Are you sure you want to do it? There's a whole spectrum, so I choose which one. And I could also progressively go to it. And depending on the relationship, how long I've been coaching or in coaching relationship with this individual or this group, then there could be a whole range of, the startup that I'm coaching, they try all sorts of things that my other clients would not try, right? who am I to tell them how to run their business? But there are some things that they want to try, and I'm like, that's not a good idea. And here's an example from Microsoft, here's an example from this company, here's an example from that company. It has not worked well there. What are you trying to achieve by doing it? Okay. Any other comments? We're about to wrap up. We won't do the exercise.
So basically, body language makes a lot of difference, right? With what
Huge. It's incredible how much you can read from the body language. And it's not just the stereotypical that, right? It's specifically, when somebody goes, nothing else is said, and right away you're like, okay, what's going on? Yeah.
Let me put forward an example, right? In my team, right? People have an attitude.
Now you need money.
Okay, all right. I'll definitely ask you that. So probably people have an attitude, right? When I'm trying to just make them understand certain things, they might not take it rightly, right? But do you think there will be any particular one-on-one sessions required, or do I need to involve their team leads in during discussions? What's your suggestion on that?
Yeah, I do a lot of one-on-one sessions, and the one-on-one sessions range from providing information, doing training, to what's best, what to do this. For example, one of my clients, they had too many people for one Scrum team, and break it into 2 teams, 3 teams, who goes where, what, the other. So yeah, we had a number of one-on-one conversations before then, saying, okay, let's help the team decide. But actually, the manager has never done this before. I have done it elsewhere before, and I can't. I did say I have done it elsewhere before, but I needed to explain to him the mechanics of how we will do it, so the team can decide, and the manager feels comfortable about this. So I had a number of one-on-one conversations with this manager, so he would trust the approach, because he's never seen it. He's never done it. He's never even heard about it. And yet, when we did it, and it was the team's collaborative decision-making, at the end he looked at that and said, wow, that worked. So part of the one-on-one conversation, part of it was to, what do you want to achieve? Why do you think 2 teams is better instead of 3 teams? Why is 3 teams better instead of 2 teams? How to get there? And this is what collaborative team formation would look like. This is what it would take. And he's not comfortable with it. The body language is stiff. And I'm saying, like, if it doesn't work, we can always change it. And all of this. So creating a safe environment for him, first of all. He trusted me enough to even have this conversation. But what do we do then? Right?
Agreed.
All right. Any final thoughts?
One final thought that is coming to my mind, what I've done. One attribute of a coach would also be absolutely honest about the shortcomings that he or she might be having. Be upfront about it, make sure team members know about that. Then only the team members would feel that it's a safe place where they can share their inner thoughts. They can also share their failures, their space where they might be scared of. So you've got to give them that space by opening up by yourself, sharing whatever your deep thoughts might be, so that you can have that space where that everybody feels safe about sharing what is happening, and then only that trust would be there, and then slowly you can just take it to the next level. That was my one thought which came to my mind.
Definitely, building trust. And there's many different ways to build trust, and also there's the right times. Sometimes it's right to do it at the very beginning. Sometimes you start with the basics, then go deeper. So you decide on the timing. There is no one prescriptive way on how best to do it that works for everyone. So we won't do the coaching dojo. This is coaching.org. These are the people who are behind that particular work. And that's my information, and the slides are on slideshare.com. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Silvana, for your valuable time. Guys, you can post your valuable comments and feedback at myrapo.com, okay? myrapo.com. Thank you.